Guys, welcome to today's walk and talk. I apologise for any background noise. I am outside and it is quite windy. But anyway, welcome to Savvy Social Show. We're having an election edition. I've stayed away from the election. I do try to be unbiased. However, we're going to look at why it's called a snap election. This week before, I thought November would be prime for an election, but as I said in my sister channel, SavvyMoneyShow, check it out. It's more about finance. I thought November would be prime for it. However, due to the fact that two of the things Rishi is standing on is bringing down inflation and bringing down energy costs. Inflation they've brought down to 2.3%. But they've done that by going by the American model, which is taking out certain aspects, which if they kept all the things in that was originally in, it would be 4.3%. So they've removed certain key aspects of the inflation data to make it look better. Now, with regards to energy costs, because we've had a hotter spring than usual and summer's coming, people using less energy, the price cap is due to come down by 7%. That is due to rise, according to the experts, by 12% this winter. So November election would show energy rising, so that would be no good for him either. Anyway, let's get into it. Why I think Tories are going all in on the elderly vote. Right, you can see here how they're looking to reduce inflation, grow the economy, reduce national debt. Well, every party should be looking to do that. And however, you've seen how they've brought in periods of austerity and the national debt has risen, inflation has still gone up, because even though, for those of you who don't realise, even though they say, oh, it's come down to 2.3%, total inflation since all this has started has actually been a total of 20%. So you have to add all these figures together. Now, they're saying the economy has shown signs of growth and they're expecting it to grow. However, it's been growth at the cost of the people, and this is what Labour has been criticising. The Office for Budget Responsibility, which is the government's own department for figures, has stated that due to recent events and due to inflation and what's been going on over the past few years, that the tax-free allowance should have been risen to over 15,000. They have kept it at 12,000, and that has brought in 143 billion to the Treasury each year, and for that reason they could spend between 8 to 20 billion with no effect on them to reduce national insurance rate by 2% each time, and it will give them a bit of a cushion, but it's hurting the people by bringing more people into the poverty line. It is hurting pensioners, because more pensioners that have inflation-linked pensions or triple lock state pension, they are going to be paying more in tax. So it's giving with one hand, taking with another. They keep promising tax breaks for these people, but all they're doing is giving national insurance. Reason why? Because if they raise the tax-free allowance, then you're going to get people who do self-assessments there's less tax coming from them. You're going to get people who are on benefits end up getting more money for that, which means people who are on poverty line have more money to be able to survive, and they don't like that. Now, the thing is, this non-dom status that it's talking about undoing, well, you'll see the non-dom status has to be reviewed for every person every 10 years. And with everything that's gone around with Rishi's wife, her 10 years is up, so it has to be reviewed anyway. And if Tories lose, then he knows that it will go anyway, so he thinks he'll preempt it by saying we'll get rid of non-dom status. However, I've done a video on my sister channel about this already, so I won't go into too much depth already about how she should be earning £1 million a week if she just put her money into a normal savings account, and the tax on that would be extraordinary, but she doesn't pay tax on it. And even Rishi's tax would be on what he earned as a higher rate taxpayer would be extraordinary, but he hasn't declared the right amount. Check that out. NHS waiting times have skyrocketed over the past couple of years, and there's no point in them saying they'll sort it out, but they've been in power for 13 years, and because they've had so many prime ministers, they're blaming each other. It's no good. They need to sort it out. And now they're looking at charging for an ambulance when they are not taking responsibility for things like Partygate. They're not taking responsibility for the PPE scandal or anything like that. The COVID pandemic, Jeremy Hunt sold all of the pandemic equipment 6 months before the pandemic hit, and then they refused to accept free pandemic equipment from experienced PPE providers in order to give this useless PPE contracts to donors. And it cost billions to get rid of it. Immigration. Look at the Rwanda scandal. Nothing, no one's gone on it, except for someone going on a holiday, in my opinion. Immigration has risen. It would have been cheaper to send that person on SpaceX's trip to space than to set up this Rwanda agreement. And you can see here the amount of crossings, but the fact of the matter is, it's difficult to tell how many people are crossing. It's only by the amount of people boats you stop, that you're able to tell. Labour are focusing on education. One of those things, getting rid of the tax breaks for private schools. And I've heard all the arguments, such as, will they give scholarships to underprivileged kids? But the fact is, I've gone to see some of these private schools before this video, and they give 1 or 2 scholarships. The reason they do that is because they get a 20% tax break, and they would actually have to pay 40%. They'd be, or 43%, because they'd be in a higher rate tax band because of how much they charge. And I went to Westminster School, which has a huge amount of land in Westminster, and they said they're buying up a huge amount more land, and so they could use it, even though they've got a lot of land for playing fields and for their school area. I think they're worried about losing the tax breaks as well, so they want to kind of make sure they've got all these assets on their books that they can't be taxed on beforehand. Whereas, if you recall, with the Tories, the Education Secretary spent a fortune having her office remodelled and paintings done, while all the schools were crumbling because the concrete wasn't up to standard. Now, the Conservatives also have said this 16 to 18 year old framework ensure everyone will study some form of English or maths. You know what? I'm not too upset about that, but the thing upset about is this 18-year plus thing, where everyone has to go into national service or they have to do the community service. Now, I said a long time ago, this sort of thing should brought in, if it's brought in properly. First off, with national service, you shouldn't be forcing people into doing it. And they're saying they're giving a choice, but they're not, because you choose to do it or you choose to go into unpaid work. When you're an 18-year-old, you need money, and the fact is you either volunteering for something for nothing, or you go into a paid national service for 12 months. So, fact of the matter is, they're effectively forcing them into national service. They're saying it's their decision. And it's been proven before, forcing someone into national service never works, which is why we scrapped it. Now, I think getting them to volunteer for other areas is great, but there should be paid some kind of benefit or expenses for volunteering. At least something. Even if they're paid some kind of pension payment, like if something is paid into like a private pension fund, and that just sits there till they retire. At least something. But you know, I'm hot on pensions. I'm big on pensions. Now, this is the other thing. The government's MPs have all secured themselves huge pay rise, while they have been blaming all these workers who are on just above minimum wage for asking for a similar pay rise. Now, they're already on 75 grand a year, these MPs, and now they have no problems asking for a pay rise when they have all their expenses. People like Suella Braverman, who have been heating their parents' home with their expenses, and Zawadi, who have been heating his stables with expenses. You know, so you have the Tory government promising to bring in tax breaks for pensioners, but how can you trust them when they haven't done what they promised last time or the time before that? You know, Cameron got in by saying he would clamp down on big businesses like Boots and Vodafone and get the 40 billion they owed in tax. And what was the first thing he did? He told HMRC to stop the investigation into them, where they had they had a mailbox in another country and called it their main office, and because they were donors. Now, when he brought in austerity soon after, the amount of money austerity saved was less than for that 40 billion. So all he had to do was collect the 40 billion from Boots and Vodafone, and there didn't need to be any austerity. This is the kind of thing we're talking about. And don't think I won't call out Labour either. You know, because if they come in and don't keep their promises, I will be calling them out as well.